Wait a minute. What am I doing playing piano in the dark? Let's get some light in here, huh? Why is my light turned off? And what am I doing wearing a hoodie? It's the middle of summer. What the hell? Ugh, much better. So, 2024. What a year, right? A lot of stuff going on. Definitely in the music world, a lot of stuff going on that year. And now this year we got Kendrick at the Super Bowl. That was pretty cool. And then I think Tyler, the Creator, just put out an album. And then Breach is coming out pretty soon. And then there was I think Sabrina Carpenter did something. Because people just... I think this is God's punishment. So, I listened to a bit last year. I mean, by, like, music critic standards, not a lot, really. But for my standards, especially for stuff that came out, like, within the year, I feel like I listened to a lot and had some variety in there. So, yeah, I wanted to talk about that today. So we're counting down Jasmine's ranked list of 16 albums that she listened to that came out in 2024. Alright, real quick before we get into the list, we do need some housekeeping that needs to be taken care of. Lay down the groundwork, define the rules of what we're doing here today. First of all, in order for an album to qualify for this list, I need to have actually listened to it. So don't ask me about Short and Sweet. Don't ask me about Hit Me Hard and Soft. I'm sorry, they were on my radar. I just never got around to them. We'll probably do that once I'm able to approach music freely again. And do not ask about Brat, okay? That's just not my thing. I'm probably never gonna listen to Brat. Sorry to disappoint. No, don't leave! Alright, secondly, I'm defining an album as a project that has at least 9 songs on the track list. No EPs allowed here. Obviously, for obvious reasons, because you can't really compare them to full-length projects. Finally, in order for an album to make the cut, it had to have come out in 2024. So, unfortunately, Miss Chappell Roan will not be making an appearance in the video. Yeah, it sucks. I need to let you all know. I shouldn't have to let you know, but I gotta do it anyway. I should. This is all my opinion. I do not support harassing artists. I do not support harassing fans of artists. Everyone is entitled to like whatever they like as long as their music isn't being made by a fucking fascist or something, which should be a weird thing to say, but unfortunately in today's climate, it's not that wild. I scored every single song on this list, which is a fucking grueling task, by the way. I don't know how people do this as a hobby. So I scored every single song on this list on a scale of 0 through 10. I kind of put my justifications for the numbers here. But you have to keep in mind that it's really arbitrary, and my opinion kind of changes day to day on a lot of these songs, and it's not an objective value. Like, don't take me too seriously. Okay, I'm just here to have a fun time. And aside from numerically scoring tracks, I also have a more like refined way to describe my tastes by dividing albums and how much I like them into tier lists, which I will show you in a moment. Take it away, Jasmine. Alright, so this is a really unconventional way of recording, and I apologize, but I really don't want to spend money on this at this point in my life. So let's just break down the tiers a little bit here. Alright, so first up we have Princess of Power. This is like an S tier album. The name, of course, comes from the show she wrote in the Princesses of Power, which just altered my brain chemistry and saved my life. I'm not even joking. So this is where those albums go. Next up here we have Arendelle Queen. That's like our A+ tier. So the name comes from Frozen, if you've seen that, obviously. If you have not seen Frozen, then I'm genuinely really surprised, and also I think you should fix that. Yeah, I'm like a weird loser fangirl. I like children's media, but I don't know, just like whenever I think of the Frozen franchise, I just feel like I'm at home. This is for those albums that, you know, I put on rotation regularly and they make me feel like I'm at home. Alright, next tier, this is our A tier. We've got Barbenheimer, which I unfortunately had to hyphenate, otherwise, here, I'll show you. Yeah, it just doesn't fit, so that's really lame. Yeah, so Barbenheimer, that's, if you remember, like the movie phenomenon that one summer when Barbie and Oppenheimer came out at the same time, so everyone wanted to see those two movies together, and it was like a whole thing. I know I participated in it. Yeah, so the Barbenheimer tier, that's just for albums that are like, you know, they should be like, that it's a cultural reset, and they should, you know, get their flowers. Alright, next up for our beer tier, sorry, beer, what? I haven't drank any alcohol today, by the way. Our B tier, we've got Biden Wins 2020. This is not an endorsement of Genocide Joe, by the way. Fuck him. I'm not gonna say what I want to say about his recent diagnosis. So, y'all remember for the 2020 election, you know, that was kind of at the height of the pandemic. There were a lot of mail-in votes. So those were, you know, like, it took a long time to count all the votes, and Donald Trump was like, stop the count, because Biden was just winning, and he kept on winning no matter how many times Trump tried to deny it in the courts. They said, nope, Biden's the president. You know, that time, it was just a gift that kept on giving. So this tier is for the albums that are the equivalent to that. Next up, this is our C tier, which is not bad by any means. Like, this is still albums that I would consider good. This is the Yeah tier. This is in reference to the Miiverse. Yeah, I never used Miiverse, but a while ago, Elon Musk disabled viewing other people's likes on Twitter, probably because he was called out for being a weirdo. That's the reason behind, like, pretty much all the updates on Twitter. Anyway, for like a solid week or two, everyone was replying with the Miiverse yeah, and like various fan-made artistic iterations of it to show that they like to tweet, and I don't know, that was a really fun time. Probably the last time I had fun on Twitter, actually. Next up, we have our D tier. This is getting into territory where I think albums are mid. They're not that great. Kiki Miki, that is in reference to the second to last episode of the Owl House, you know, where the stakes are high, and for some reason they decided to set the episode in Hexside, and we just needed to close out an arc with Basha out of all characters and Kikimora, or Kiki Miki, as Luz's mom put it so graciously. That's what this tier is about, you know, just like these like expectations that were disappointed. Our next tier, so CW Hair, this is for albums that I really don't like. I haven't really watched any CW shows aside from like the first season of Riverdale when it was, you know, coming out and popping off. The CW Hair, the name, that's actually in reference to season 3 when Kurt Hummel and Sebastian are, you know, at the Lima Bean and they're fighting over Blaine, and Kurt tells Sebastian that he doesn't like his CW hair. Then Grant Gustin went on to be on the CW. Iconic, but these albums are not iconic. They're actually not good. All right. Oh, and then the bottom tier is Soul Steel. This is in reference to Brad's taste in music. If you've seen any of his videos or tuned in to his live stream, whenever there's a song or a moment that's just
really awful that, you know, whoever made it happen deserves to be punished. He kind of just... I'll just play like a short clip to give you the gist of it. Sorry, but I gotta say goodnight. Oh, and you know what? Speaking of Brad, just to get it out of the way, I'm just gonna put him right there. Okay, let's move on to our list now, shall we?
Alright, and one last thing before we get into the ranking proper, I would like to shout out my own projects. Like I'm not gonna competitively pit my album against the other artists on this list, okay? Because that would be an insane thing to do. So yeah, I think you should listen to it, and I'm not just saying that because I made it. I say it because I think it's genuinely really good. I mean, I didn't bring the vocals far enough to the front of the mix, but in my defense, I made all these instrumentals by myself, okay? So can you blame Gal for wanting every aspect of her creation to bask in the sunlight? I was mad about a lot of things while writing this record, and it does get pretty bleak, but listen. The music's bopping. There are no skips. The final broadcast of the Brooding Empire is part autobiographical, and it's part concept horror about living in the United States in the 21st century and everything that comes with that. There's some lore and a lot of symbolism and allegory that I want people to unpack and discuss. Pretty please. I put a lot of work into it. I wanted to give voice to the existential dread and the powerlessness that many of us were feeling and are probably, let's be real, still feeling with everything going on. There's strength to be found in creating space for the things that we're either like not really comfortable talking about or we want to talk about but we just don't have the language for it yet, or we just need like some sort of emotional catharsis. So yeah, I just wanted to say my piece before the world ended, and the world isn't over yet, so boost my numbers, please. I feel the need to explain myself here and then give you the proper context, because what you have to understand, this is totally out of my ballpark. The only reason why I listened to this album in full at all, the only reason why I would even touch it in the first place was because Brad Taste, pre-Crash Out Brad, put it on stream before Illumined by Imagine Dragons. I thought I was in for a day of content, and I was right. It was fun. Yeah, so what I need you to understand is that outside of that very specific and niche context, I would not have sought out the Victoria's Secret Girls project on my own. She's not a model, by the way. I feel like I should clarify that. She's a singer. She made a song called Victoria's Secret. It sounds very TikTok. It's about how, like, the model was made up by some old guy in Ohio. You know the one. Play the clip.
I know Victoria's Secret. Girl, you wouldn't believe. She's an old man who lives in Ohio, making money off of girls like me. Cashing in on party issues, selling skin and bones with big boobs. Jelly bean strikes me
It's always off-putting to start an album with a theatricality and depth equivalent to an AJR hit, but making a hide your kids, hide your wife reference in the year of our Lord Shira 2024 is immediately disarming. I mean, with interlude titles like Hawk Tuah, Barbara, Your Husband is Gay, Neurospicy, and Epstein Didn't Kill Himself. Wow, that's timely. I know exactly what I'm getting in I know exactly what I'm getting myself into. Trying to record a video with autism. Truthfully, I'm actually kind of smitten with Jax's comedic timing on some of these songs. Telling your audience that you're going to have to sell pictures of your feet if your music doesn't pop off on track 2 of your album. No notes. Holy shit. Barbara, your husband is gay. Was funny until Trump's second term. Now it's just depressing because, Barbara does not care, will not change her ways. The culture is happily gonna play ball with her. Like, guys, you don't understand. We are so fucked. The hard cut at the end of
Epstein didn't kill himself.
Can't say that.
Why not?
I mean, it's stupid, but it gets me every time. The dynamic between Jax and the girl she babysits in the Babysitter's Song. I need to see it recreated in an anime of two fictional characters yesterday. Somebody get on it! Where I actually run into issues with Dear Joe is during its more serious moments. I mean, don't get me wrong, I appreciate seeing both the sentimental and silly sides of an artist, but if they're not thoughtful about how they glue those two pieces together, it really hurts the emotional takeaway of the project. In the back of my mind, I'm always anticipating the next punchline, which probably isn't an appropriate mindset to have while Jax is saying about being in denial over her daddy getting old. And when I say daddy, I mean her father, like the familial man figure who raised her, not Adam Sandler. She gives them both the same honorific, so I just want to make sure that there's no confusion about who I'm talking about here. Some of these ballads really drag on and slow down the pacing of the album. For example, Like My Father is a genuinely beautiful love ballad with great storytelling, objectively the best song on the record, and I'm honestly kind of amazed that Jax wrote it at all. So then following it up with more piano ballads that aren't as captivating turns that section of the album into a total snooze fest. The end of the album, mind you, which is like the worst possible time to be doing that. It's also not great that sometimes Jax just can't help herself with some of the lyrical content and songs are supposed to have more weight. Hearing the math just isn't mathing sound unironically and How Dare You takes me out every single time I hear it. The fact that the title of Superbad is definitely an intentional reference hinders my ability to put myself in the situation of worrying about a friend dating someone who won't treat her well because it's just so fucking unserious. And the lyrical content being so on the nose makes me roll my eyes. Jax, I believe, or at the very least hope, that your audience is smart enough to figure out what you're trying to say so you don't need to spend so much of the track's runtime to state the obvious. I Choose Violence drops the word cleverer and spends 2 lines of the second verse explaining how math works. Speaking of I Choose Violence, I'm gonna cut back on the jokes as I discuss my feelings about the song because it's about trauma and being groomed by an older man, and I do not want to minimize either of those things. The title I Choose Violence for a song about being taken advantage of and harmed suggests some sort of vigilante action, but that's not what the song is about. She even discourages that behavior. All she's doing is telling girls that the much older men that want to be romantically involved with them are creeps and, more importantly, losers. Which is great. I like that message. What I don't understand is the lyric, "If I die trying." Doing what exactly? Jax's vessel violence isn't vigilantism or a literal militia of girls. It's a pop song that doesn't include any sensitive information about real people. I mean, opening up about horrible things that happen to you through art and releasing it to the public where it will potentially meet scrutiny. Sorry, I mean, it's terrifying. I get it. And I think maybe, for me at least, part of the issue lies in how this generation has nullified violent language, which makes the chorus feel gauche when it really shouldn't. It's just a hurdle that I'm personally struggling to get over, partially because of my preferences in songwriting and partially because I'm fortunate enough to not have a good point of reference to relate to it. Tying into my overall feelings about the album, I think Dear Joe can be fun, but on a deeper level, it just does not connect with me at all, which is perfectly okay. I mean, come on, look at me. I am not in the target demographic here. So, yeah, even though I don't derive much value from this project, that doesn't negate the effect this will have on other people, and I think that's a beautiful thing. Even if I think a lot of the music is bad, but you know what? It's fine. I'm not mad about it. You shouldn't be either.
So this is very obvious. I'm gonna put Dear Joe by Jax in the CW hair tier. Not very good. Objectively quite bad, actually, but it does have its moments. Some of those moments are good, and then some of those moments are just fun to make fun of. You know, kind of like Riverdale. actually. I think the show had some musical episodes, so I could definitely see some songs from Dear Joe being featured in that show. You know, very TikTok.
Although I will say that sometime in the future, I am planning on making a good lyricism versus album video about Dear Joe. So, stay tuned for that. So if you saw my reaction video to Loom, this ranking is not gonna come as a surprise to you at all. If you have not watched that video, I recommend it. It's pretty funny, and also I fight with my laptop for like 5 minutes. It's great content. My feelings at the time of recording that video were genuine, and I stand behind it. I'm not taking any of my criticisms back. To give you an idea of how much I dislike Loom, like after I'm done with the process of making this video, I'm not going back to it ever. I haven't even ever gone back to it in any context outside of making this video because that's just how bad it is, honestly. But you know, what's interesting is that how much I can stand listening to it really depends on what I'm trying to get out of it. Because if I go in for just vibes, it's not awful, it's okay. But you know, if I try to approach it critically, I become blinded by a visceral anger swelling between my ribs that scathingly hisses at the sound of the frontman belching nonsense. But more on that later! Loom provides a snapshot into Dan Reynolds' life, showing us the chaos of navigating fame and losing connection with the person that has been by his side and built a family with him for a decade. The closing track of begging for some relief and an old sense of stability would hit a lot harder if the pacing on this project wasn't the equivalent of a blink of an eye. It makes for a listening experience that feels really flat. I mean, is Imagine Dragons known as a band whose albums have good track sequencing? No, but I feel they used to utilize a tension and release between songs that made sense, you know? The emotional trajectory of Loom is produced in such a way that it feels like a horizontal line when really it should be a downward slope. If the band were clever, this could be a good narrative device, an audible representation of what it's like to mask worsening depression. What I think is far more likely, however, is that they're following the same bombastic formula that everyone's been sick of for the past 7 years, which still works because we don't live in a self-respecting society. The mixing on this project doesn't leave enough space for the big moments to feel as grand as they should, because in most of these songs it's so one-noted in how in your face it is. And I'm pissed that I even have to say this because you can hear the intricacy in the production. Did it not cross their minds to make the compositions more dynamic? Getting back to Fire in These Hills, I still stand on it being one of the best songs on the record, but the piano does really overpower all the other stems in the first half, especially with that reverb on it. That just does not help make it fit in with everything else at all, so I do have to dock off some points for that. Kid has the worst lyrics on this album by a long shot, and those vocals in the chorus are so unpleasant. Like, I get a pit of dread in my stomach anytime I hear that opening vocal and bass line. Wake Up is the perfect thematic opening for this album. It's a shame that it barely makes any goddamn sense and the repeating ad-lib completely ruins the song. Not to mention that I find new things to hate about it with every single listen. I'm sorry, that's so impressive. How did you manage to do that? Nice to Meet You still fucking sucks. My opinion has not changed there. I'm literally physically incapable of not grimacing every time I listen to it. Then in the middle, we have In Your Corner, which is a song I clowned on a lot during my initial reaction. Rightfully so. Although, finally, recently, I had the realization that it was a boxing reference, and suddenly everything snapped into place. Now, don't get me wrong, the shouting is incredibly tacky, and it sounds really bad, but I get it. Oh my god, do I get it. And right after those gorgeous and spacious strains in the outro, we have to trudge through the cramped production on God's Don't Pray to get to Don't Forget Me, which is unfortunately kind of boring. So, basically, it's not a rewarding experience to listen to this album. Half of Loom is not good, with some songs being straight up unlistenable. These tracks are dispersed in such a manner where your best streak is gonna be Eyes Closed in your corner, and that's still not great. That's like your average 3-track run off of Origins. I'm wearing the shirt. Let's revisit Dan's goal for this project, for the listener to feel. I mean, I feel angry because of how half of these songs sound, but aside from that, am I deriving anything directly from the emotional content of this album? No, not really. I know that they titled the album Loom because it's inspired by a video game, but the word itself does have meaning. That change is on the horizon, basically, and, it could be good or it could be bad. That's why the album looks the way it does, which is something I did not realize upon my initial reaction to it, because, it could be a sunrise or it could be a sunset. You can't really tell. But the problem is, only a third of the album contains any substantial change in Dan's life, and it's all interspersed between material we've already heard from this band multiple times across multiple albums. Longtime fans can back me up on this. For example, Dan has been saying about the disillusionment that comes with butting heads with the music industry while trying to chase your childhood dreams and smoke and mirrors.
An album that came out a decade ago?
And, it's fine to, sing about the same shit and have a new perspective on it, especially that he's coming to terms and recognizing, his position as this, present-day legacy rock artist sort of thing, but that doesn't fit in with themes of change, does it? It kind of seems like the opposite, actually. And it really doesn't help that the lyrics on this album are so surface level and largely uninteresting. Rick Rubin's influence on this band, especially to Dan's songwriting, is a scourge that's probably going to follow them as long as they keep making music. That is not to say that the simplicity is inherently bad. However, when you combine the simplicity with a weak concept that doesn't do much for the imagination, as well as obnoxious production choices, you end up with a nothing burger of an album. And this is a thing that's supposed to make me feel some sort of profound emotion. You can't even give your audience coherent clues on what they're supposed to be taking away from this project. How the hell can you expect me to take you seriously?
Alright, so here's the deal with Loom by Imagine Dragons. Now, this might come as a surprise to you, but I'm actually gonna put this album in CW hair tier, and I think I'm gonna put it behind Dear Joe, which I'm very conflicted about. I might change my mind on it, but my gut is telling me to put it underneath, and here's why. Even though Loom's highlights are better than the ones on Dear Joe, and proportionately there are more of them, I mean, realistically there are the same amount of songs, but because Dear Joe has so many songs and interludes that are not good, I feel like that gives Loom an edge as the better project, but at the same time, just the total disrespect that has been lobbed against me with this record, I cannot understate just how much I do not like this album. God, June 28th had just a terrible output this year. I need to find some good albums that also released on this day to outweigh it, because the fact that this was the output on my birthday makes me really sad. Yeah, so anyways, Loom was Soul Steel tier album for a while, but then I read a Rolling Stone interview with Dan Reynolds, and I remembered that he's just genuinely an earnest guy, and that saved the album from the bottom of the barrel for me. No kidding.
Alright, I'm not gonna lie, I was holding my breath going into this record. I mean, I was thrilled with the direction Half Alive was taking in Give Me Your Shoulders Part 1. But unfortunately, Conditions of Punk was a bloated mess that felt like the band were getting lost in the sauce. The two subsequent singles having Josh Taylor lean heavily into emo boy vibes, and the band doubling down on their use of generative AI in their artwork, yeah, some good favor had been lost on me. I'm happy to report that I did like Persona. Something that caught me off guard was that the sound of these songs kind of reminded me of Walk the Moon's later discography. Everything is bright and moves with a desperately optimistic energy while being soaked in bittersweet nostalgia. This album has the band's most simplistic lyrics to date, but I think they've maintained enough complexity to be interesting while gaining some more universal relatability. The repeated choruses do get tiring,
annoying, believe me, but I can't say that I'm unhappy with Half-Alive going more pop. They can write good hooks, and I like that they carry a positive message. Honestly, it's a perfect follow-up sonically and thematically to Give Me Your Shoulders. That EP was about the trappings that keep us from savoring the present moment and our human desperation for a deeper connection and meeting. Persona expands on that, but everything feels more mature this time around by demanding more authenticity and self-accountability from ourselves and each other. The closing statement of Thank You confesses that, in the face of all the hardship of the present and the uncertainty of the future, Josh is grateful for the experience of being alive. This is a powerful record for the moment we're currently living in, and it's a shame that it's probably going to get overlooked. But then, as I revisited the album, it began to sour on me a bit. So, at first, I thought all the songs went pretty hard. However, that isn't as good as a thing as I initially thought it to be. You see, the production is really abrasive across the entire album. It doesn't sound super good, to put it lightly. Even when there aren't any screeching synths or stems drowning in distortion, a lot of these songs feel really sharp on the ear, and there's just so much going on. Like, this is Josh's most assured vocal performance yet, and I do give him credit for that, but his belting is getting drowned out in the mix, and the room size of the reverb really is not doing him any favors. I want to like these songs a lot more, but the mixing is just way too chaotic to brush aside. It is so depressing to listen to Persona and then pull up a few seconds from any song off of Now Not Yet and hear the contrast in spacing. I don't know what the hell happened, but I hope the band learns from this misstep. I just say that the pacing of the album is good and makes sense, but there is an issue concerning variety. In their previous records, each track sounded different from each other, but on Persona, there are generally 3 types of songs. The upbeat, mid-tempo storyteller with a soft bridge that pulls everything back, the fast and peppy anthem with an explosive chorus, and the chill ballad that actually gives you a moment to breathe, but sometimes the sentiment can be pretty vague. Half-Alive's Persona has a unique spiritual self-consciousness compared to its contemporaries, and that does give the project a lot of personality, but unfortunately, it's also pretty forgettable. The abrasive production, especially at the album's beginning, also does not help its replayability. Alright. So, this makes me really sad, but I'm gonna put Persona in Kiki Miki tier. Oh, I forgot that tab was open. That's my bad. There we go. Give us a little more space. Okay. Yeah, the album's mid, unfortunately. The thing about it, too, is that if it had better production, it would go up to yeah tier. Like, that is all that it would take to bump this up. Yeah. I don't know, not really much else to say about it.
Oh, here we go again. The voices in his head called the rain to end our days of wild.
Alright, listen. This part was already fully scripted once. I had paragraphs upon paragraphs written about how this album is mid, that it was all boring, self-engrossed, mid-tempo synth pop, that it was weird that we were getting so many details about a fantasizing romance between Taylor Swift and Healy, and that it was the pop equivalent of a psychological horror movie with cinematography so stunning that you can't bear to look away even though you're feeling really squeamish. But I had been trying my damnedest to get something out of this album. It was rewarding me more and more with each listen, and then one day, as I was driving through the Midwestern forest back to my apartment after visiting family last Thanksgiving, I don't know how, but it finally clicked. Like, after a year, I can genuinely say that I like the Tortured Poets department. Now, don't get me wrong. For a Taylor Swift record, it is kind of mid, but I'm not an idiot. I have the capacity to recognize and the integrity to confess that Taylor at mid is still pretty good. And yes, even if you are going into this album with an open mind, it is a boring, self-engrossed mid-tempo synth pop. It is a drag to get through TTPD, especially with the anthology. That being said, I think all the clowning on Jack Antonoff is unjustified, and a lot of you clearly don't know what the hell you're talking about. The production on all of these tracks is stellar, and for the most part, dynamic enough to maintain my interest. However, there are some songs that do kind of drone on needlessly, but I fault that more on its repetitive structure. Concerning the topic of Matty Healy, because everyone loves to talk about it, I think the best approach is to,
take a few steps back, chill out a little bit. I mean, I'm not saying to separate the art from the artist and her muse, and neither is Taylor. Not at all. Like, she could deadass name drop the man explicitly, and she would still not be any more obvious. That's how I feel about it anyway. I think Taylor is at her most interesting when she lays all her flaws out on the table. That's what making art and using it as an outlet for intense emotions is all about. And I fear a lot of you have missed the point of what she's actually saying. A lot of the discourse surrounding this album, and frankly discourse about anything in general these days, is so broken because valid criticism is being mindlessly intertwined with an all-or-nothing Christian-esque moral code. It's harmful for everyone involved, and if you're the kind of person that engages with that sort of thing, I hope you sit down and really reflect on what you're actually getting out of it, and if that's something you really want in your life and to perpetuate into the lives of others. The fact that such discourse has existed around a real person who, in a multitude of ways, has been dehumanized makes me feel really icky, if I'm being honest. But then my head starts hurting when I ponder the paradox of Taylor's overexposure being forced on her, while she herself has made decisions to maintain that tension as a grown adult that has the power to do basically whatever the hell she wants. I meant what I said about it being a horror movie. I was circling the drain in spectacle and plummeted into the beauty of human ugliness underneath it all. Just like how Taylor swirled Maddie Healy into all her poems, and when reality had finally caught up to her, she wrote 2 fucking albums venting about it and then made a shit ton of money. In the aforementioned drive through the Midwestern forest, I found that I had at last understood Taylor's vision in Fortnite. The longing nostalgia and its inner turmoil bordering on mental illness is such a good concept. I confess that I was too blinded by the memes and the random Post Malone feature to realize it. My bad. TTPD has lyrics that, well, make me want to eat a typewriter. My boy only breaks his favorite toys is a lot of fun, and I really like it. Down bad is disgusting. Like, it's so gross. I hate alien sex metaphors. I'm sorry. That's just like the biggest fucking turn off. And then once we get to Solo in London, I no longer feel any embarrassment listening to this album. The stretch from But Daddy I Love Him to Guilty as Sin is by far the best part of the record. The hooks here are so good. Fresh Out the Slammer and Guilty as Sin are genuinely catchy. The latter of which, by the way, should have been a single. Though, if we're lucky, maybe it'll get the Cruel Summer treatment just in time for Kamala Harris to lose to Donald Trump again. The one other hiccup present in TTPD is Who's Afraid of Little Old Me. The first verse is like,
Oh no, here comes Notorious Taylor Swift playing the victim.
Then the second verse comes around and you remember, oh yeah, she's had to deal with intense scrutiny toward her art and wildly inappropriate speculation about her personal life for her entire career, including during what one could argue are the most crucial years for developing her sense of identity and where she fits in the world, and it becomes genuinely depressing. Taylor tells us just how much emotional and psychological pain she is in during the first half of the bridge, and it's hard to hear. But then it circles back around to being petty and stupid in the second half, and she just totally loses me. I'm sorry. The vindictive overcompensation is a really bad look. One thing that really sticks out to me on this record is that Taylor's singing sounds really good. Sometimes when I'm listening, all I can think is,
wow, her voice is so pretty.
So, yeah, the entire album being mid-tempo synth pop does help her in that regard. Another highlight is that the album is such a devastating listen. I can feel Taylor's exhaustion from giving everything she had to maintain her empire and long-term relationship, finding reveille in escape, and the ultimate shock after being toyed around with by the smallest man who ever lived. What would make this album even better is some modifications to the track sequencing to tighten up the thematic coherence and fix pacing issues. Speaking of,
Your hologram stumbled into my apartment, hands in the hair of somebody in darkness.
I am not treating this like a separate standalone album. The Anthology is not a separate standalone album. The full government name of the project, the Tortured Poets Department, The Anthology, implies that you cannot divorce one from the other. Part of this album is essentially TTPD Deluxe, and part of it is unnecessary meandering. Not to say the meandering is bad. I enjoy the detours of New Love and Still High School, the relatable peek into Taylor's maladaptive daydreaming and I Hate It Here, the story of the Bolter and Robin, which nearly brought me to tears when I first revisited it. But 2 songs about Kim and Kanye, Girl, stop. He's already dead. I thought we closed this chapter with karma. Even if we ignore the embarrassing capitalization of Thank You, Amy, that song still sucks. These lyrics are really bad. Everyone was memeing on the lines about GTA in the 1830s, but nobody's talking about the plaque of the bronze statue of Amy that's threatening to push her down the stairs at her school. Yes, chat, you read that right. Not the statue, the fucking plaque.
Okay. Don't worry.
The whole metaphor is so clumsily done, and the way that's obviously about Kim, but Taylor's like,
I changed your name so nobody knows that it's about you. Not even your dark.
girl, shut the fuck up!
So even though I did not treat these albums as separate projects in my proper ranking, I am going to split them up for my tiering here because I just think that makes it more interesting. And you know, I go back and forth on which half I like more all the time because I do like the sound palette of the anthology more because I am a folklore girly, but at the same time I recognize that the album proper is just a better standalone project overall. It's more cohesive. So how I'm divvying these up, right? I'm putting the Tortured Poets Department and Biden Wins 2020 because once I really wanted to get something out of it, like it was just a gift that kept on giving. Like if you really want to like it, you know, just keep giving it a chance. I promise it's going to reward you. But the anthology, as like a whole unit, regrettably it is kind of mid because with Taylor, like you have these like high expectations, but then the payoff is just not good, which is how I feel about that episode of the Owl House anyways. So yeah, that's going in Kiki Miki tier in front of we'll put it right there because Persona does have promise. It's just like the mixing that really sucks with that. Yeah, I'm feeling good about this arrangement so far.
Burnout is a weird album. For an alt-rock record with some experimentation, it's pretty standard, but for a Boy With Uke project, it doesn't actually really sound like a Boy With Uke project. The same themes and lyrical quirks are there, but the sound palette is totally different. The vocals are scaled back, real drums are being used, and the infamous ukulele is nowhere to be found. For those that don't know the Boy With Uke lore, the TLDR is that Charlie started his career essentially living like Hannah Montana, but for a multitude of reasons, the split persona was becoming detrimental to his mental health, so he decided at the end of Lucid Dreams to do a face reveal so beautifully executed it somehow, by some miracle, makes Dream look even worse. Losing the mask means losing marketing value for Boy With Uke as a brand, and considering he wants to go in a direction where every song doesn't have a similar uke strumming and finger picking patterns and an 8-bit drum beat, it makes sense that he split with his label. The artistic direction that Charlie's going in here makes sense. Lucid Dreams had the least minimalist instrumentation, so it's not a surprise that so much space is filled up on Burnout. I want to say that the change is welcome, but everything is way too compressed here. Not to mention that if you're a new listener, you are definitely going to need to look at the lyrics to understand what he's saying because the vocals are pushed so far back in the mix. There are a few moments where the vocals are suddenly brought forward and the transition can be quite jarring. I feel like I'm being jump scared every time I hit the 1 minute and 32 second mark in Ghost. The drastic change in production style really sets us apart from other Boy With Uke projects. Not only that, but it does really feel like the mask has been removed and we're seeing Charlie genuinely for the first time. You can tell all these lyrics are written by the same guy, but the growth in songwriting from Lucid Dreams to Burnout is stark. If Charlie had decided that this would be Chandler's first project, it could have worked. Some of these songs are treading completely new territory, yet on the other hand, questions of purpose and love raised in Lucid Dreams are answered in Burnout. So again, it really could have gone either way. So I suppose the question being raised is this: where does Boy With You get his proper send-off? I mean, Lucid Dreams was all about how Charlie wanted to ditch fame because it felt like his entire world was falling apart. The story could have ended there, and I would have been totally happy with that. It's a tough artistic and business direction, one that Charlie himself has gone back and forth on, and I absolutely love the extra layer of depth that gives the project. That being said, Corduroy and Change definitely work better as Boy With You songs, in my opinion. The guy that has and continues to struggle with depression is reminding us that it's worth it to stay alive, and he's reassuring us that we can handle change within ourselves and the dynamics that we have with other people. That is so important and beautiful. Anyways, more on the music itself. I think Burnout is pretty good. The compression and a few weird production choices do hold back some of these songs from being legitimately fantastic, but I see the vision and I'm a fan of what Charlie's doing here. Admittedly, the album does have a weak start, but once it gets going, it's flying. The second half of the album being better reflects how some of these songs send you to the astral plane if you're patient enough to sit through their entire runtimes. Corduroy is just a straight up masterpiece, the best song that Charlie has made so far. I will not be accepting any counter arguments because I am objectively correct here. Speaking of Ghost, though, I think the start of the switch up could have been executed a lot better. I like how it demands the listener's attention and draws them into one of the central conflicts of the album, which is the breakup from Charlie's 4-year-long relationship with his girlfriend. One of my favorite parts of the song is the transition from the low-key halftime to the energetic comment time. The part where he goes, and then in the background there's a descending piano chords that he's harmonizing with, and it's going it's wonderful, and it has so much personality. His Tism really shines, talking about how he's obsessed with this girl and he knows he's coming off weird, and not only is he self-aware about how bad it looks and doesn't like that he is this way, but he doesn't blame her for wanting to leave him. There's something so charming about the honest confession that all the fame you could ever acquire can't erase the awkward child inside of you and his desperate need to be loved. And I'm not kidding about his autism. A major aspect of his alter ego is literally him masking. The album is called Burnout. We all should have seen this coming. This new knowledge puts a lot of things into context, and it makes sense why I related to his music so much when I first found it. But the songwriting on Coffee it's rough. It's really rough. I mean, there's no connecting thought between the chorus and the verses, which have an awful flow, by the way. Unironically saying sorry for the trauma dump when a core part of the act this entire time has literally been trauma dumping, and why I am here really pulls me out of the immersion in the worst possible way. How the fuck did he mess up the meta commentary this badly? He should have just kept the second half as an interlude before Paper Planes.
And on a related note, regarding ways in which I think this album is cringe, Gaslight would have been a 9 out of 10 if Bro gave the song a different title. Just being toxic to each other does not classify as gaslighting. I'm not gonna let this little lie and get away with it.
Coffee is the exception to an album that largely succeeds at conveying what it's like to lose your identity, both as a creative and in your relationship, and how one affects the other in a negative feedback loop until you've nearly lost your sense of self as a person in general. Going off of the assumption that Charlie's previous songs were autobiographical enough to be based in some truth, I mean, I know he was like playing up a persona, but come on, that had to have come from somewhere. There were signs of their relationship being on the rocks going as far back as Serotonin Dreams. It was definitely present on Lucid Dreams, so much so that I seriously thought that was a breakup album. I like that Burnout gives us that closure of what happened after these two people grew apart and fell out of love, and how each stage of grief affects Charlie's psyche and self-worth. Having your sense of self so intertwined with external factors and then becoming resentful of those things, which in turn distorts your self-perception, while having an outlet of self-expression taken over by a persona that isn't really you, like, No shit, the dude felt suicidal. I hope Charlie finds some peace within himself and will one day overcome his imposter syndrome. I imagine it's hard to see it now with all the pain and negative associations still fresh in his mind, but he did create something special as Boy with Uke, and it would be great for him to see the positives for what they are instead of ruminating on what could have been. Letting go is one of the hardest parts about growing up, especially for autistic people. I relate to that pain all too well. I would love for Charlie to keep his word and not let himself burn out.
So next up, we've got Burnout by Boy with Uke. And this is one that I really want to put in Barbenheimer tier because it is such a shift for his career and sound, but there are too many weak moments for me to justify putting it up here, especially with the problems that I have with its compression and mixing and vocal production at times. But I also have to acknowledge that he's showing us really intense development and growth, which I love to see. So I'm just gonna put it in Biden wins 2020, I think. Although I am gonna put it behind the Tortured Poets department, because even though I am probably not ever gonna listen to that album again in its proper order, I think in concept it does give me more than Burnout does, but I don't know, my opinion could change. We'll see.
So, I do have a hat from Dead that I bought when I saw him live, but I wasn't really sure what shirt to wear. So I decided on my SpongeBob shirt because Sandy Cheeks is here, and she has that song where she yodels about wanting to go home to Texas, and Emily yodels, so that was the first thing I thought of. So yeah, that's my reasoning behind that.
I miss those wide open skies. I miss my 20 acres, barbecues and pecan pies. Oh, why?
Everyone I know is breaking hearts tonight. Everyone I know.
Yeah, so like I mentioned, I have seen Dead before. They came to my city for a one-off show to promote the release of this album. I hadn't heard of them before, but I wanted to see some live music that night, so I did. And I thought that they were pretty cool and that their music was pretty good, so I thought I'd check it out on Spotify. And here we are. This record is about falling in love and getting your heart broken by either someone you have romantic feelings for or by life in general. Poetry is so fun, and you can feel the lived experiences listening through it. Having the minimalist instrumentation of guitar, bass, and a scaled back drum kit throughout the record means that Jason, Emily, and Eric need to put extra thought into not only how to fill up the space of a song and keep it interesting, but do it consistently across 14 tracks for over 40 minutes. They succeed at this by switching guitar tones and effects between each song, implementing auxiliary percussion like tambourines, blocks, and shakers, and of fully utilizing the versatility of Emily and Jason's voices. The two have great vocal chemistry. Their shared belting line at the beginning of Mood Ring always brings a smile to my face, and the polyphony at the end of the song combining different earlier sections is executed so brilliantly. What sets Mood Ring up for success is where it sits in the track listing. Putting Get Back Now, Here Comes My Baby, Rough and Tumble Man with a Little Bit of Danger, right after Gotta Love the Good Men, but that ain't what I want. Give me someone rough and tumble, someone hard to love, was a genius move. The rest of Poetry doesn't have this specific narrative through line, but it doesn't need to. Dog Days is a perfect opener, giving us variant snapshots of love and misadventure, and the two often overlap. Whether it's the mutual nervousness in the start of something new, the ease of developing feelings for a friend, the struggle and payoff of learning to open your heart, or not being ready to let go of someone, romantic relationships can send a person into a journey that's full of life and self-discovery if they're willing to throw themselves completely into it. One minor issue that I have with this album is that with the guitar and vocals being at the front of the mix, most of what I hear are mid-range frequencies, meaning after a while I can get really fatigued listening to it. The mellow vibe of the record also does not help with this. And then with the poetry being so simple and at times vague to its detriment, I don't always
always know exactly what a song is trying to say. In those instances, I have to rely on the guitar riffs to sell the emotion, and yeah, it works, but it fails to connect with me on a deeper level. But the good energy of this album has a life-giving grip on me, so I can't really complain all that much. I did not have much to say about it in my review, nor do I really have much to say about it in my justification for its tiering, so it's just gonna quietly and proudly go into yeah tier.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, action!
One day when I was working in the fast food drive-thru, one of my coworkers was listening to a podcast and I suddenly heard Girl Defined mention. I thought, that's interesting. Another time, I mentioned a video I had recently watched from Forrest Valkai about parasites, and he said that he loved his videos. Shortly thereafter, we clocked each other as ex-Christians. He played Cult by Candy Carpenter for me and recommended that I listen to the Demonology EP, which I did, and I thought it was interesting. I was kind of keeping my eye on it, seeing if they would come out with part 2 or what have you. The full album did come out eventually while I was soaring through my things before moving to Minnesota, and I thought, what the hell, sure. Demonology is a wonderful piece of pop music. Kenny has described demonology as performing a self-exorcism, and I think that's a really cool concept. It covers religious trauma, sexuality, insecurity over image, and abusive relationships narrated by a person that is very anxious and also very angry. And that makes me so happy. Because even though these are very difficult topics, Kitty's songs are executed in such a welcoming way that you feel safe letting your guard down. Something that they themselves are really struggling to do. The way they write and sing about their anxiety brought on by trauma and autism is so creative and at times really, really funny. In Serial Killer, for example, they believe their significant other is secretly plotting to kill them because they're not used to being treated nicely. Which is really sad, but come on, that's funny. In Antisocial Butterfly, they reveal that their friends sent them to the guidance counselor for threatening to kill themselves over AOL Messenger, and this is the type of information that they'll casually share at parties. The same song drops the question, what if God is a little kid killing bugs for fun? Which is an insanely hard line akin to that one Spy Kids quote. So for anyone that gets offended at, even the notion or the artistic expression, the emotional catharsis that, hey, maybe this isn't all that's cracked out to be, maybe this is actually kind of messed up, or you think that Candy's kind of messed up, we need to now direct our attention to their religious upbringing, which I would argue is even more fucked up. It seems like they have the typical conservative evangelical upbringing that involves Christians hating and being afraid of everything out of their tiny tyrannical bubble. Someone needs to ask the real questions, like, why is a little kid afraid that they're the Antichrist because your imaginary friend can't talk to them? And why is that same little kid also afraid that they're going to be killed for their Christian beliefs in a majority Christian country? Every single aspect of your lives, from your belief to your culture, is driven by fear, and it fucking ruins people. Brainwashing is a powerful tool because why are people taking you seriously while you say shit like there are satanic themes in Dragon Ball Z? Speaking from experience, by the way, growing up in an environment driven by fear can have devastating impacts on someone's self-image. It is so maddening to hear what Candy has gone through because they seem like a really cool person underneath it all. This music has so much personality, and it's always awesome to see an autistic person take off their mask and get weird with it. Ironically enough, Demonology feels like going to a party, but one spent spilling tea with your closest friends. It's a celebration of having survived and clumsily building a new future for yourself. If you're a former Christian that feels isolated and lost, please give this album a listen. So, Demonology by Kenny Carpenter, I'm gonna put it in yeah tier. By the time I discovered this album, I was already a few years removed from the thick of it, of getting over my religious trauma, so I don't feel that strong of an emotional attachment to it, but I know it could definitely help out some other people, which is why I want to bring it up higher, but for now it's just gonna have to stay where it is.